Hi, this is Michael Uslan. You're listening to Batman on Film.
I'm vengeance.
I have given a name to my pain.
The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill the Bat of Gotham. I'm Batman.
Welcome to episode 242 of the official Batman on Film podcast. This episode is another installment of Batteries to Power, revisiting the pop culture phenomenon that was the 60s Batman TV series, starring Adam West and Burt Ward. I'm senior contributor Javi Trujillo, and joining me today is a seller of comic books, Patrick Johnson. How's the direct market doing, Patrick?
Hey man, what's going on? It's absolute Batman. Every day, all day. In fact, I heard a friend of mine say absolute Batman has now become Jehovah's Witness. They say, do you have time to talk about absolute Batman? I'm not kidding. It's been good. It's been good. DC's kind of taken over the sales at our shop.
Nice.
I think Marvel will eventually get something going when they reboot their Ultimate Universe, but they've kind of been playing catch up. But it's all good. How are you?
Doing well. We just had a night of watching the Super Bowl, or at least half of it, before I got bored. and you know, just living it up. Did you do anything fun for the Super Bowl?
I had a friend had a little get together, so we went, and he had a lot of great snacks and stuff. But seems like all the action happened in the last quarter, from what I gather.
Yeah, we switched to a movie, but I was kind of following along every now and then and just checking, and they had the website. It was AP News, had like a percentage of like the odds for who was going to win, and like no matter how many times that the Pats scored, it was still like 100% win for Seattle Seahawks. So yeah,
to the chagrin of that guy who bet $2 million on the Patriots.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm like you. I kind of bailed on about halfway through.
Yeah, I mean it was a really slow going first half for sure. Yeah. And not a lot of DC or Batman content. Was it 2 Super Bowls ago? We got a trailer for The Flash that showed us Michael Keaton, and this time we just have Ben Affleck as the Dung King. So not a lot of Batman related Super Bowl tie-ins there.
Right.
But we are not here to talk about Ben Affleck or Michael Keaton, but Adam West. And as I ask all my first-time guests, I want you to tell me your Batman 66 story. How did you first come across the show?
Okay, so I think my parents tried to hide this show from me when I was a kid because they saw how much I geeked out over Superman 78, Indiana Jones, James Bond, and I discovered this. I went to the first time I discovered a comic shop. One of the things I wanted was to buy old Batman comics, something prior to when I was born. And I remember picking up Detective Comics 356, and coincidentally with this episode, Batman 169. And I opened Detective 356, and in the inner cover was the ad for the 66 movie. And it has all the characters on it. And I lost my mind asking my parents, what is this? Why haven't I not heard of this, seen it? And they kind of just sort of blew me off. And then fast forward about 6 months or so, in one of our local, we had a WBTR, this local Baton Rouge Channel 19 TV station. Almost looked like, I don't know, some sort of UPN TV station or something. They started running the episodes in the afternoons, and I was
Nice.
glued to it. And about a year or so later is when they announced Keaton as Batman, and then I was
Okay, so we're
I
mid '80s at this
yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah, mid-80s. Mid to late, 87, 88, and, it just went from there, and I've loved it ever since. However, I wanted to see the '66 movie because they didn't
Mhm.
air that as often. So I found it in a video rental store, VHS, and to my horror, it had a sticker on it that said "comedy." And as a kid, I was really offended because, I knew some of it was goofy, but I wanted it to be serious, if that makes any sense, you
Yeah,
know?
I in the late '90s, I worked at a video store, and I don't feel like we had it in action before we made, like, a superhero movie section. I mean, granted, this superhero movie section was basically Superman, Batman, Blade, The Mask, you
Mhm.
know, Steel. There wasn't a lot to put in the section,
Did you
but,
have some of the '70s Marvel TV movies like Red Brown Captain America or
we
Nicholas
did
Cage
have
Spider-Man?
we did have the Red Brown Captain America. We had the Matt Salinger '90s Captain America. We didn't have any Nick Hammond Spider-Man,
Yeah. Okay.
but we had, like, the Incredible Hulk TV movies that they put out on VHS, The Flash, both
Yeah.
the, pilot, and then there was a two-part VHS that had both Trickster episodes.
Oh, nice.
Um, Meteor Man was in there, you
I
know?
remember me.
Yeah, so it was a very small. I mean, today it would be ginormous, but,
Sure.
late '90s wasn't a lot of pickings, and, especially good Marvel pickings.
Right.
I mean, it's primarily, like, Batman, and, once I got hired on, it's like, "I'm gonna put Mask of the Phantasm on this shelf because it's not live action, but it was in theaters," so I slid that in there.
Yeah, that counts. Good on you.
Um, yeah. So by the time you saw the show, what was your Batman fandom like? Was he your favorite character? You just like Batman? Did the
Um,
show alter your perceptions in any way or love of the character?
it enhanced it for sure. Because at that point, I don't know if I knew about the '40s serials, and I don't think I had seen any Batman live action. So, like, several of us will say this was my, entry point into live
Yeah.
action Batman. So it's near and dear to my heart. I had always liked all the superheroes as a kid. Uh, Grew up, they were sort of a staple in the late '70s, early '80s. Um, Batman had always been at the top because he was in so many different cartoon iterations in that era.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd always loved him just for all the reasons you probably do too. He had always been at the top.
Cool. Well, for episode 2 of Batteries to Power, we are talking about 2 episodes. The first is Fine Feathered Finks, which aired 60 years ago on January 19th, 1966. The second is The Penguins of Jinx, which aired the following night on January 20th. And as you can guess by the titles, our special guest villain is Burgess Meredith as the Penguin. And if you're from a certain generation, specifically Gen X like me, and I would assume Patrick,
Sure.
uh, Meredith was Rocky Balboa's trainer, Mickey. Or maybe you saw him and thought of the grandpa and grumpy old men. But I would think that me first, and then because I definitely remember seeing Rocky and like Rocky 3 in particular in theaters, and like I knew of him also as the Penguin thanks to my dad. So
I'm with you there. I think I saw Rocky 3 before I saw this Batman show. So, um, so I put it together as a kid, like, oh, it's the same guy because there's only one Burgess Meredith, and he
yeah,
sounds exactly like that all the time. So,
yeah, that's not like some affect that he's putting on for the show. Like that's how he sounds in Rocky.
oh
That's
yeah.
how he sounds in Grumpy Old Man. Like that's just his voice.
It's funny you say that because I'd forgotten about him and Grumpy Old Men. It's been so long since I've seen those, but I really enjoyed them. But I have to go revisit that at some point.
Yeah. Oh, it's been decades since I watched those, but I remember him being a part of it. And the synopsis for the episodes on IMDb reads: The Penguin plots to manipulate Batman into inadvertently devising Capers for him, which was then followed the next night by the dynamic duo are tricked into planning the Penguin's next crime, but the supervillain adds his own twist to the plan. So not a lot of distinction there, IMDb. They both kind of read the same.
Yeah.
And this episode, part one, opens up with like more stock footage of Gotham. You know, it's showcasing like this bustling metropolis and predating Nolan's take. Like, there's nothing fantastical about it. It's just like a typical city. There's no weird Gothic architecture. And
Right.
it's like when we see it later on in like part two, especially where we see like this backdrop at nighttime, and it's just like it's a sprawling city. Um, and it's an interesting contrast how the city looks compared to like the zany villains and their outlandish plots. Like, how do you like this depiction of Gotham in this episode and the show as a whole?
Well, I never cared for the stock footage. Even as a kid, I knew it was the same.
Yeah.
The night stuff worked so much better because it wasn't so crystal clear and bright. Um, it didn't really do anything for me as far as this is a Gotham. I mean, I have a friend that says this is the cleanest Gotham in any of the Batman incarnations. And in fact, Adam West being the best Batman because he's cleaned it up better than any other Batman in any other incarnation. And I'm like, you know what? You got a point. You got a point. So, but it just looks like New York to me. New York in the 60s or 50s, whenever this is from. But it works because it's so brief. But I never get a great sense of Gotham as a whole,
Mhm.
like living, breathing city, just because it's not. I mean, some of the sets work for it, but when you're on like studio backlot, I think that actually works better sometimes. But yeah, I'm okay with it for what they had to do. And plus, they were they're on a budget, which they kept cutting.
Yeah.
With each season, especially season 3.
Yeah, I've never watched the show in order really, and so I've made an attempt and started, but now I'm going back to the beginning for this podcast, and I'm curious to see that de-evolution of Gotham as we go along because I've cherry picked, before on this box set, and like I feel like a Joker episode today, and I only have 20 minutes, not 50, so I'll go to season 3, and I'm curious how that plays out as we go on. But it's also interesting to note too, like people are always trying to guess what city or Gotham is or what state. And the only thing we can definitively say at this point for this show is that it's on the East Coast. Because we get a scene later where Robin's looking at all these clocks and they're like, all the different time zones.
Right.
And it's got Gotham as the central one, and it's an hour ahead of Chicago. So we know it's not central. Gotham's on the East Coast.
Right. Good catch there. I didn't. Which is that in the same episode? This episode?
Yeah, it's in part 2.
Okay. I missed
It's in
that.
the Penguins of Jinx.
Hmm.
And the plot for this is inspired by Batman 169, which was cover dated February of 1965. So fairly close to production for this episode.
Right.
I have to think like what would have been like to have been watching this in 66 and reading comics and being like, I just read this comic book.
That would be so.
Yeah, and I never really thought of the shows like having like doing direct adaptations of specific comics.
Right.
So it's cool, going through like IMDb trivia to see that. So I read that issue before rewatching these episodes just to kind of like see the influence.
Right.
And the main Penguin story for that issue, because there's 2 Batman stories, at least 2 Batman stories that are available for you to read on DC Universe Infinite. And the main Penguin story for that is called Partners in Plunder, which is something that the Penguin later says in part 2, where he talks about Batman and he being partners in plunder. And the comic opens fairly similarly to this episode. but with the addition of the Penguin being stumped on what to do next, we get like mentions of U Day for U for Umbrella, and just his going into shops and having umbrellas laying about and giving them to people, and the raffle that's supposed to happen at the beginning of this episode, that's in the comic. Have you ever read that issue before? Are you familiar with it?
I have. That was one of the ones that I mentioned at the beginning that I bought kid. So I remember the giant umbrella that took up
Yeah.
the street. They were I didn't I mean there are differences with they bring in the model actress lady at the end to be the crime versus the meteorite, which is
Right. Yeah.
the plot which they go with in the comic. But yeah, it's been a while. I should revisit it now.
Yeah, Leslie Parrish shows up in the second half of the episode, and she plays Dawn Robbins. And I appreciated that they mention because ultimately in the comic, the big heist item is this meteorite, and it gets a mention in the second episode. But then there's all these ways that it wouldn't be possible, so they kind of discard it
Right.
as like as a scheme for Penguin. And so that's when they devise this Leslie Parrish. They're going to kidnap Dawn Robbins and kind of stretch out the comic story a little bit.
Right.
This episode also, the first time we get to see Batman and Robin, in this case, Dick and Bruce. Bruce is trying to help Dick with his language studies, which, it's like, it feels like every episode there's something that Robin says where he puts his foot in his mouth, and like either Batman or later in one of the scenes, Commissioner Gordon has to kind of educate Robin.
Right.
And he's always like, gosh, I didn't see it when you put it like that. And we definitely get that here. If only we all learned multiple languages, the world would be a more peaceful place, apparently.
Right. I think Grayson, he gives up his fight too quickly, though. He's always, why do I need this? Bruce will say something. He's like, gosh, yes, you're right, Bruce. I just want to hear him say, no, I'm not reading this today. I'm done today. I'll pick it up tomorrow. But he just turns on a dime.
It makes me kind of hope that maybe there's an episode that I haven't seen where he does that, and like Batman's like, something's wrong with Robin. He must have been brainwashed, or Mad Hatter did something. Like, I hope that happens at some point. I guess we'll find out by the end.
Right.
But we also, Aunt Harriet comes in, and right as they're like, let's go fishing. And she's on IMDb, she's still billed as like Mrs. Cooper, but this is the first time, granted it's episode 3 or episode 2, depending on how you want to look at it, but this is the first time that she's referred specifically to as Dick's Aunt Harriet, because in the last two-parter that Bill and I did, it was just Mrs. Cooper. And they kind of go back and forth between Mrs. Cooper and Aunt Harriet. But so far, no explanation as to how she's Dick's aunt. I guess maybe she's related to his mom, since she's or she's Mrs. Cooper. So I guess she could have been married to Dick's dad, and then, Grayson is her maiden name.
Right.
But so far, no real development on Mrs. Cooper, just fishing. And Alfred is the one who tipped him off that the bass were biting.
He cannot tell a lie.
Yeah. He's so good.
Oh, yeah.
And as we, transition over to the police, it's one of those budget things, right? Where I feel like in the first episode and this one, like Gordon's surrounded by like this cadre of officers, like having this confab on what to do. And at some point it gets whittled down to just like him and O'Hara, but there's still money apparently. So there's like 4 other cops, and like, what are we gonna do? Do you have an idea? Do you have an idea? Well, no, I think we need to call Batman. Well, I admire you for,
Yeah,
you can put your pride aside.
I often see things like that, and I'm like, they took the time to dress up featured extras, and they're sitting right there. You could give them a quick line, just anything, just like, no, Commissioner. You could just say that. Like, what do you he could turn and, but they always, like you're saying, it's always him and O'Hara, and you got some window dressing in these other uniforms.
And it's funny, like, how do you like Gordon in the show?
I think it's really funny that Neil Hamilton, is that the guy's name?
Yeah.
It's really funny that he took all of this serious and played it serious, because it almost gives in more to the camp. It's kind of like Leslie Nielsen in Airplane. You play
Yeah.
it serious, the jokes land even funnier because he's taking it more seriously than like Stafford Rep, is that his name? Who
Mhm.
played O'Hara. I think he's great for this incarnation. But
I mean, there's a part of me that's always just going to like him because he was the first Commissioner Gordon that I ever saw.
right,
Um, but then, there are parts of him where it reminds me of like the Schumacher Pat Hingle Gordon, where he's just so ineffective, and it's like, and like, how did you get this job? you know, and that's kind of the case with this episode. It's like, well, the Penguin's back, and none of us are smart enough to figure this out. So let's get Batman, who really doesn't do any better.
right,
Um, and but he's got like the foresight to know that Batman's going to ask to speak to the warden, so he has the warden flown in via helicopter before Batman even gets there. He's just like waiting in the wings. And so it's like having this like prescience it's fun. It's funny to me, and I guess that's like the comedy of it, right?
absolutely.
Like they can't figure out the Penguin's plot, but they know that Batman's going to need this guy, so let's get him in there via helicopter, which couldn't have been like an easy thing to do,
No,
you
no.
know?
Just a police car to pick him up, fine, or have him.
Right.
Can you come?
Yeah.
Can you drive your car here? No. This is an emergency. Penguin's out on the loose. Send in a helicopter. Rather, you could just tell Batman everything that Gordon Crichton says.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's like the trope of like any TV show anyways. It's like you want to have the characters in the room talking to each other, but like you watch something like Smallville where like for 10 years it's like, even though it takes place or it came out like the late or starting in the 2000s where everyone had a cell phone by that point. Not a smartphone, but a cell phone. You still have people living in this rural setting, driving to other people's houses to say something for 3 minutes and then leaving, but it could have just been a phone call.
Absolutely.
But I mean, that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I think they
But,
wanted to introduce him to Gordon Crichton so they could use him in the future.
Yeah, and he does at least get a mention in the next episode, if not an appearance, uh, with the Joker. But one of the things that the warden, prides himself on is being like so progressive, and so he lets the inmates wear their costumes like a week before release so they can acclimate back into society.
Right. Now, you bring up a good point. Batman asks his opinion on the character, how the characteristics of the Penguin are now. Is he reformed? He said, well, I brought a videotape for you to see. And it's almost as if Crichton didn't watch the videotape.
Yeah.
Seeing it for the first time, and then he gets all bummed saying, well, I guess I failed again. You flew here in a helicopter with your videotape that you had set up ahead of time with their quote unquote IT department. Got them at the time.
Yeah.
And no clue what was on it.
Yeah.
I laughed at that.
Like,
Anyway.
why are you videotaping it if you're not like, what's the point of the videotape? Like, because he clearly said this whenever he said it,
Mhm.
and it had been like days. So they're just like recording him for no reason. No one's reviewing it. And it does the thing that always irritates me. Where it starts off good, where like the camera angle is kind of like, looks like it would be in the corner looking down
Right.
at the cell, like a real security camera would be.
Mhm.
But then as the scene plays, and it's still in black and white, like these scenes, which is cool. because the show itself is in color, so it gives it that security footage feel. But then the camera angle changes, and then we get a close up of his cellmate, and then a close up of the penguin, and it's lower. It's not the same angle, so it's like, who's changing the camera angles?
Yeah.
And are there multiple camera angles that
Camera
someone
creep.
edited
Right.
before coming over? And it's just one of those pet peeves of mine when I watch any show, doesn't or TV, movie, or whatever. When they use security footage and it's clearly artistically done.
Right.
So it's not like a fault of this show. It's just how these things have
Did
been
they-
made.
You have to correct me here. Did they use the Dutch angle when they did some of the close up in that security footage?
Don't feel like they did this time, actually.
All right.
Yeah, I don't
They
think they did.
did that right, but they had multiple cameras.
Yeah. And Penguin makes this remark about Big Brother, and shoots out the camera. So he's got a loaded weapon in the jail cell.
Was it shooting or was he stabbing it with the end of the
Well, you know what? Maybe he did stab it, but even still, like
Right, yeah, he could use that.
Penguin and umbrellas.
Right.
I mean, I guess it's part of his progressive policies.
Yeah.
Um,
You'll let them use their outfit the last week incarceration. You're also going to
Yeah.
give them props, even if it happens to be a rigged umbrella weapon.
yeah.
There you go, Crichton. Way to go.
It's kind of like, can you imagine like Arkham did that, where they would like let the people use wear their costumes and as part of their treatment. Like it's funny. And that's the thing, is like we can rip this apart like this is ridiculous and this doesn't make any sense, but they're making a comedy and it is funny. So like
Yeah.
you can point it out and poke fun at it, but I
I
mean,
think that's why this show never fully goes away, is since it works on those multiple levels. Like kids
yeah.
might take it seriously, they might not. Adults get every joke, and
Yeah.
they get a kick out of.
No, there's definitely that
Some of the
big difference of
ridiculous
when I would see
The
reruns at 8.
multifaceted aspect.
Oh, for sure.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, there's definitely a difference in watching it at 8 years old on a Saturday morning rerun compared to in my 40s now, and just actually laughing at it. And I get, I've kind of talked with Bill about this too. Like, we've had so much Batman content since the show came out, and I totally get how Mr. Uslan felt after the show came out and trying to bring a dark and serious Batman to the big screen, because so many people saw this, and even still to this day, the whole Bam, Pow, Biff, and holy this, holy that, like that's left its mark in pop culture, and it's never really gone away because there's still older people like me that'll mention it.
Yeah. Even
But
as yesterday, I watched clips from the onomatopoeia episode later,
oh yeah,
and as onomatopoeia is using his phrases to attack Batman, swoosh, then Batman knocks him out and says "pow." So I mean,
yeah,
that's obvious nod that or bubble. So yeah, I don't think this show will ever go. I think that's about it. It's sort of timeless, although it's dated, but it
yeah.
works.
Oh,
It's
I
still
mean, just by the fashion alone, it's dated.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like that's a genie that's never going back in the bottle. But we've had, since the show, we've had, the Michael Keaton movies, which are definitely darker, and the Dark Knight trilogy, obviously Ben Affleck's take, and now we're in the Batman era. And I feel like a lot of the sting for the comedic aspects of the show, it's lost some of its impact. Like I just find myself not minding anymore. Like, I don't mind Batman and Robin and Batman Forever anymore, because that wasn't the final word in the bat coffin, so to speak.
Sure.
So you can watch these and just have fun with it like you were supposed to.
Right.
Because we've gotten like more faithful adaptations, and we've seen the aspects of the character that we love brought to life. So there was something else I noticed that was really weird. Uh, just a little aside, like Batman calls Robin old man at least twice in the first episode. I think he might do it again in the second part, which, like you hear like English people saying like, well, old boy, but like old man. And I can't think of him ever calling, Dick or Robin that ever again. It's just weird to me. Just a
Oh, yeah.
little thing I noted.
It is strange, but I think he's being sarcastic in a few of his sarcastic moments. And some of that stuff could be additive too. Sometimes, as I don't want to spoil anything in a future episode. There are times when they would try to slip in little lines to see if they could get away with. This is not this big a deal, but there's one later with the word thrust. You might remember from a particular episode and how it was used. Somehow it got past censors. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
And a big part of this series is villains picking themed hideouts. Here we have a building that the Penguin bought after he got paroled by KG Bird. Which in one sense is funny because, like, well, KG Bird, there's KG Beast, but KG, the initials being KG. And I'm sure that the comics leaned into this trope first before the show did. I don't really feel like this is an invention of the TV show, but it's something that they kept doing in the comics after the show came out. Like definitely, I can think of like several like Alan Grant stories in the 80s where, the Joker's at the Laugh Factory or, whatever. What do you think about how they figured out the Penguin's lair going through the actual paper records of Gotham?
Well, it's perfect because it just gives the show another chance to make fun, and it's always fun. I remember there was a Catwoman episode where she's hanging out at a place called the Gato and Chat.
Yeah.
Brother. And
Yeah.
Spanish French for cat. I think it's great, and it's just another chance to throw another joke in there, see who's paying attention. Although if they said it once and it went away, that would be one thing, but they say it several times. So it's funny in the beginning, loses its luster a little bit as they continue. But this whole show, it's nothing but fun, really. So
Yeah.
I always appreciate that. It's kind of like when I would watch Mel Brooks movies and the way he would, I don't want to get into it because some of it's insensitive, but I'm thinking of some off the top of my head that, it's great.
And there's this big theme of surveillance in this episode. Not just because we had the security cameras, but like later, Penguin's, eavesdropping on Batman with one of his umbrellas where he hid a device, and then Batman also later tries to track him down with his own surveillance. And it's just funny because like you would think that, similar to like the Dark Knight, he would just anything that was like joke related, bird related, cat related, like he would just set up like cameras and watch these places nonstop.
Right.
Because I mean, clearly they always go back to these same things.
Right. Well, they said one of the other jokes was, have there been any new umbrella factories that have opened? Like 3, as a matter of fact. Like, how many umbrella factories
Right.
stores do you need for something the size of New York? I thought
It's like mattress stores, or like I always wonder when I drive by them, like because they never seem to have anyone inside. And it's like, how many people like are buying mattresses that you need to have like multiple stores in like a even a big city, like how does that sustain itself? But
it's
the
not
second
buy every week. You know,
Yeah, it's
keep it
you get
ticking.
one, you're good for like 8 years or 10 years or whatever, maybe even longer. So, uh, one of the gags of the umbrellas, Batman and Robin catch on to it, and they go into this room. They're like, "Everybody, get your umbrellas," and they put them in like the trash can, basically. And Batman's like, "Grab that asbestos pad,"
I did catch that too. I was like, oh god,
and then
maybe
it starts
set
to
it on
catch on
fire
fire.
so people are gonna inhale the smoke.
Yeah,
Asbestos.
and that's like back then it was like asbestos for everything for like a fire retardant, and now we're like, oh no, that's cancerous.
Right.
So that's one of those things that I mean, it hasn't aged well, not in an inappropriate sense, but from a health sense.
True.
So, hopefully Batman has an anti-cancer pill in his utility belt that he can give to everybody there from inhaling all that.
Right.
But you mentioned at the top of the show the giant umbrella gag that follows that scene with the asbestos. And when I was reading the comic and it got to that part, I was like, there is no way that they're adapting this part for the show. And then they pull up on a giant umbrella in the middle of the street. I'm like, nope, they went there. And it doesn't look like some kind of rear screen projection or a matte painting or anything at this point.
Right.
It looks like they made a giant umbrella, and we even see like Batman and Robin like walk up to a portion of it. So there is something physically there that they're touching. And I was impressed. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, they had big money at that during the beginning of the first whatever. Watch you compared that to the third. Right.
Kind of like Star Trek.
Yeah.
There's definitely like a budget decrease that you notice by season 3 of Star Trek, and you definitely see it in this show as well.
Right.
And again, we see Batman throw his bat rope, and the initial like it's not the throwing, it's like the initial like starting to climb up the rope where it just looks like someone's hoisting him up and he's wiggling his arms and his legs weird
Right.
until he finally like gets to the side of the umbrella that he then climbs up. And then we're back to like the traditional lay the camera on its side as he, does his typical Batman walk to the top. But again, like nitpicker brain, I'm like, why didn't he just like throw a batarang to cut the wire that the umbrella that's hanging from the umbrella handle, so it can just fall and he can catch it. But
Then you wouldn't get the glorious bat climb, which
exactly.
would have really impressed me if someone popped out of a window then.
Right.
Like,
But
what?
that shot looked really good though.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I
You mean when
I was
he's being hoisted up? Or
no, not that part. When he's actually walking on the pole of the umbrella handle.
right, right.
Like I thought they blended all that really well.
Oh sure.
Um
Agreed.
so they get this umbrella that is engraved on the side of it, and so they take it back to the Batcave for study. But like it's engraved with like a dedication to Batman from the umbrella company. And they pull up and Alfred is on the atomic pile, like on the top level where Jill St. John just died the episode before.
Right.
And Robin is worried, like, oh my God, Alfred. And he's like, that's okay, the safety lock is on. And the sign wasn't there in the earlier shot when they got in the Batmobile, but it's clearly there now and illuminated. And like, is that gag just for this one moment, or are we supposed to think that because she died last episode, now they put a safety lock on it for, just in case someone else breaks into the Batcave, or I don't
never
know.
noticed that sign up there. I definitely not a. I've never seen it. There's a really funny picture of Robin on the other side. Danger, no one allowed. He's talking about stand right behind, close to falling in. I've used before and stuff. Um, but yeah, this is the first and only time I read that.
Yeah, it's a funny coincidence that they have it up there. I can only assume it's because they just showed someone die last episode. But like, why even have them cleaning up there in the first place?
Right.
I don't know. Uh, and then we get to Batman is going to he's decided he's going to bug the Penguin as Bruce Wayne. And they pull out like this drawer that has all their listening devices, and they're clearly like there's no realism at all. They're clearly like rubber snakes, rubber spiders. And did that give you a chuckle seeing them
Sure,
pull
because
it
they were
out?
so excited about it, like about planting the bug, like yellow.
They even like jiggle it too, you know?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's I hate to say it's more realistic, but like if you compare it to like Spider-Man who had like his red spider tracers, which
Right.
I haven't really seen a lot of red spiders. Uh, so it's weird to say this is more realistic than what Spider-Man had in the comics, but I mean, how often are you going to throw a rubber snake on the ground as a listening device and expect it to be mistaken for the real thing?
Right.
And again, you know, it's all part of the comedy of it because they play it so, you know, serious and like they believe in this reality that they're creating. Um, and it and I don't take issue with this necessarily, but like he decides he's going to go in as Bruce Wayne and you know have this umbrella that belonged to his dad, like have an artisan restore it. 'Cause, you know, umbrellas need artisans to restore
Umbrella.
them. And I'm surprised that no one recognizes him. Like at this point, we've established Penguin's been around for a while. You know, Bruce Wayne is that millionaire man about town that everyone knows, but like, you know, Penguin nor the Crooks, like the best they can get is like he looks like somebody, but I don't know who he is, and they just assume he's like from a rival umbrella company
Right.
that's trying to learn their secrets.
There's a contradiction there in the second episode, the meeting spot with the money for
Oh yeah, yeah,
happening at Wayne Manor. You would know Wayne Manor, you know it's home with this guy, but recognize
yeah.
that one I didn't buy, but you know, one of those.
The the thing where I take, you know, quote air quotes issue with is, you know, it would have been a cool way for him to assume like a cover instead of going in as like Bruce Wayne. Like it would have been fun to see him be like a Matches Malone or make up some other identity, put on like a fake nose or a scar and you know, and go in as like a costume kind of
Right.
way.
Which I think Alfred has done some of the
Yeah.
disguise voice, put on a hat. And I think it was actually in a separate Penguin episode. Would have framed kept. But yeah, you're right. I would love to have seen sort of early incarnation because Match didn't show up that
Yeah. Yeah.
dated that. It would have been fun. I like when they do some of these occasional. It's not gonna the cliffhanger's not gonna be standard time. Robert Stapp or something.
Yeah.
Just Bruce. I like how they sort of break it up. It reminds me of a King Tut two-parter where Bruce is back in the ambulance unconscious. That he falls out of the ambulance still tied to the stretcher, trying to get out before the stretcher goes over the cliff. It just breaks up some of that monotony. I enjoy that.
Before we get to the cliffhanger, we're going to take a quick pause in this conversation for a brief message from our sponsors. And like you pointed out before the break, the death trap here is for Bruce Wayne, not for Batman. And he's going to be disposed of in the furnace by a slow moving conveyor belt. So it feels very like old timey serial. Like and Penguin's watching it from these cameras in another room, so they're not even present, and it's another layer of like surveillance in this two-parter where like everyone's watching everybody on cameras, and the the teaser is, oh, the irony of it, the horror, the flaming end of the Cape Crusader, and Bruce possibly escape. For Batman's sake, keep your bat fingers crossed until tomorrow. Same time, same channel. So we still don't have the bat time and bat channel yet. They haven't figured that out.
I'm curious when that's going to kick in. I haven't.
Yeah,
been
I'm watching. I'm paying attention.
as your show goes on. Interesting.
What did you think of Bruce's escape using his butane lighter?
I'm gonna say that probably goes against laws of physics. Not quite enough. I mean, maybe if it was loaded with C4 and you threw it against the wall really hard. But that's I thought it was silly. But there's some legitimacy to it when Penguin has to describe what he's doing. Say, I have the same thing. Then you're like, okay,
Right, yeah.
world, that's possible.
Yeah. If you think about it realistically, it's like the risk of the lighter exploding, knocking him free of the conveyor belt, also has the risk of like blowing off his legs.
Right. And
Or something
instantly
worse.
exploding. Instantly. It doesn't take a second to warm up.
Yeah.
Some of the outer layer.
And going whatever's powering the furnace, like it's such a big explosion that like purple gas gets discharged upstairs where the Penguin is, and Batman makes his escape.
Right.
And before he shows back up in the Batcave, like when Alfred and Robin are trying to reach him, and Alfred comes up with like, well, maybe the receiver's not working because of sunspots. It's like, okay, random.
Right.
But he also calls Bruce, he refers to him as Mr. Bruce. Not like Master Bruce or Mr. Wayne, but Mr. Bruce, which I had to like rewind it and like put on the subtitles. I'm like, am I hearing it right? It's like, no, he calls him Mr. Bruce. I'm like, that's never noticed that before.
Maybe that was a slip and they just left it in.
Yeah, I'm wondering. And then when Bruce finally gets back to the Batcave, he's Batman, and he discharges Alfred to go clean his clothes.
Yeah, I actually felt bad about that when he did that. Like, well,
Yeah.
kind of like, well, if you need something to do, put into my clothes. And I was like, oh, come on, man. You know he's going to do that anyway.
But here's the thing about that scene, Patrick. He specifically says that Bruce's clothes are in Rocky shape. Rocky's trained by Burgess Meredith. Meredith is the Penguin. Holy coincidences, Batman. It's all connected.
So what you're saying is Rocky and Mickey exist in the Batman 66 world. You're right. It is all connected. I didn't put that together when I saw it, but spot on. You're Mr. Eagle Eye.
I mean, I've watched this, this twice in the last 2 weeks, and the leaps that they make in logic are pretty similar to the leap in logic that I just made right there, which is basically like the whole plot. Like, we haven't talked about it too much, but Penguin's eavesdropping on him with a random clue that has no meaning, and he's relying on Batman to figure out what this meaning is. And then based on that, Batman's going to be like, well, obviously he's going to do this. And so Penguin's just going to do that. But since he's listening, I guess he can figure out the ways that Batman's going to prepare for the way he's going to do it. So then he can overthink and have a way to stop him from how he's going to do it.
Right.
So it's really, really convoluted.
I actually really like those that I can't come up with a master plan. Let Batman. And he's figure out a way to never does. But I love when he confuses his black goons and he's like, nothing. Well, what
His
does it mean?
Finks.
Nothing.
Yeah. And so it's this part, where we talked about before, where we get like the mention of the meteorite from the comics, but instead Robin's like, that's not going to work. And even like Penguin's disappointed, like, yeah. And his guys are like, that would have been a really good caper. Too bad it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And
they show talking about the meteorite, right?
yeah.
And when they cut the Penguin's face and he just sort of does shrugs his shoulders.
Right. But instead, we get this addition of Robin looking at the umbrella, and like the colors are like a beautiful dawn. Like it's always been like just so random how they make these associations, and that leads them to the answer.
Right.
And here it's it's the umbrella looks like a beautiful dawn. Well, Don Robbins is in Gotham for a movie called The Mockingbird, produced by Ward Eagle, staying at Pelican Arms. Like there were so many bird things. Like how did Penguin not even? I'm disappointed that he didn't even think of this himself. Right. It's all laid out for him. And then like furthermore, like Dawn herself, she has like a cigarette holder, like this jewel encrusted cigarette holder. I'm like, that seems like right up Penguin's alley. Like that's like one more thing of why he should be like fascinated by this woman and want to kidnap her for ransom.
Right.
And it made me wonder too, like there's is it 89 or 90? There was a 3-part Penguin story that crossed over between Batman and Detective, like the Penguin affair.
Yeah.
And he's like obsessed with this woman named Heron who was on like a soap opera, and he wants to like marry her because she's like the villain on the show, and she's just like, well, I'm an actress. And it kind of reminded me like of that. Like it could have gone in that direction.
Yeah, that's the one where they fake Penguin's death, right? You think he's dead because there's a cover where the Penguin affair, where Batman's.
Yeah, he's like looking at the gravestone. Yeah.
I remember that
like
was a hot
pink
book,
background.
Hot book for a minute. Back in the day, like, oh, they killed off the Penguin. All us young 10, 12-year-olds were like, oh man, gotta pick this one up.
Right.
And he shows up in the same art before the story is done, alive.
Yeah, that was a different time when like trying to read solicits, all you had was the next issue box at the end of the issue, or maybe there'd be a magazine where it would like you could pre-order your comics and would kind of hype stuff up. Because I remember they did that with that. It was a yellow cover. It was when Brayfogle went to Batman at that point, and like Bruce is unmasking in his face is in shadow in front of like a shocked Vicky Vale who's in a hospital bed.
I remember that.
And they were trying to hype that up, like you need to order multiple copies of this because Batman's going to reveal his identity to Vicky Vale. And he thinks about it the whole issue, but then decides not to. And I feel bad for whoever thought this was going to be this landmark speculation issue where you could sell it for tens of dollars. Something.
Bait and switch, basically.
Yeah. But we mentioned Dawn Robbins, and she's played by Leslie Parrish, who did over like 100 TV shows in her career, not to mention movies like The Manchurian Candidate. But I know her primarily as Lieutenant Carolyn Palomas from season 2, episode 2 of Star Trek, Who Mourns for Adonais. And she was also an activist, and IMDb says she was one of the first female producers, but it doesn't list any credits for her producing anything. So I don't know if she was a music producer maybe, but nothing for film is listed. And we meet her, she's lounging around. She's got that jewel encrusted cigarette smoker, and she's posing for Fun Boy magazine.
Boy.
Yeah. And she's
I think we know what that's a nod to.
Yeah, and she's got all her clothes on. There's nothing really lascivious about it.
Yeah, now.
But,
give it a minute.
Yeah. But, she's moaning about life as a drag, and it's all so boring. And it reminds me of this woman in the pre-title sequence of The Living Daylights who's like, it's all so boring here, Margot. If only something exciting would happen. And that's when Batman shows up. And like she shrieks and she thinks he's like an alien.
Yeah, I loved that. I actually chuckled on that one.
Yeah. It's like I don't know where she got alien, but okay. And also for someone who's so bored with life and you feel like the satire really strongly here, and I laughed because she's like, "All I have to be is beautiful, and I wish I wasn't beautiful and rich because 'cause I'm trapped having to do all these rich and awesome things," and
You know,
the one moment where something happens, she, like, freaks out immediately.
right. It reminds me of, back to Mel Brooks, uh, Dom DeLuise as Caesar in History of the World. It's
Mhm.
so lonely at the top, and he's so bored, and he finally goes, "More women, more wine."
Yeah.
Anything for some excitement.
So she gets that excitement with Batman and Robin, and it's the first time we see the Batzooka in the show, and here it's used as a line launcher because she's in the penthouse of the what was it? The Pelican Arms. So
Mhm.
they have to fire the bat line with the Batzooka so they can then scale up it. Versus the Penguin, he shoots his from across the way, from this other building, which was something again, that's the thing that Batman inspired him to do because Batman told him this is how Penguin would do it.
Right.
So they burst in, and then the Penguin, once they're established, Penguin and his men go over, and he uses like this super strong magnet that only affects utility belts, apparently. Nothing else magnetic in the room. And they get stuck against the wall. And it gets the narration like you do at the cliffhanger,
Mhm.
except there's nothing really cliffhangery about it. Like this is the perfect time for them to like, well, Batman and Robin can't move. They're stuck against this wall because of the magnet on the other side of it. Like this is the perfect time to like stab him with an umbrella, something. And it's just like, no, we're gonna let him go so he can stop us another day, I guess.
I
But
think they enjoy just irritating Batman.
yeah, yeah,
Having to, "You gotta live through this because I outwitted." This sequence, I wanna tell you the, sequence where they're sliding across the line, and
uh-huh,
you have the cityscape behind them.
yeah,
Probably
yeah,
my favorite sequence in both these episodes, and I always appreciated the show when they were working at night or trying to prevent something at night because as you know, I
yeah,
grew up reading comics, you know, most of the time he was operating at night. Going back to the '60s and earlier, it was a lot of daytime stuff. Um, but I loved that, and it made me wonder whether or not that backdrop was an actual uh, fabric that they had cut holes and were shining light through, which I've seen on sets before, or if it was a giant green screen. I'm going with the former in my head. It looked like it was there,
yeah.
but it looked
No,
fantastic.
no, it really did, and that was one of the things that I was mentioning earlier, where it adds to like the city just looks sprawling in
Yeah,
that backdrop, and I liked how they had it lit to where some of the buildings were kind of gray, some of them had like more of a goldish light hue.
oh
Like
yeah,
it gave like a great dimensionality to everything and how it patterned it, you know. And it's not fooling anybody. We know they're not really there on location or anything, that it's a stage, but for what it is, I think it looks really good.
oh yeah.
Um, and so Penguin makes off with her, and they put her up for ransom for $200,000, which is the equivalent in 2026 of 2,700 and I'm sorry, yeah, $2,753.09.
Wow.
So not a bad ransom.
Yeah, no,
And the only thing that Batman and Robin are stuck there until a waiter, a room service waiter comes in at midnight and finds them and frees them. And so it's so anticlimactic. They don't even show it. It just
right.
gets mentioned and thrown away. Uh
What's funny is they couldn't get out of it. They get out of all these scrapes every
yeah.
week. That's the one. That's the one they can't get out of. Just a magnet. Of
So
course, this harkens back to the magnet inside the buoy in Batman
yes.
'66, which they also didn't get out of. If not for that noble porpoise,
porpoise.
hurled
Right.
itself in front of that oncoming torpedo.
But that's like twice that Adam West is defeated by magnets. Like,
Mhm.
I think he needs an
Both by the
anti-magnetic
penguin.
something,
Both by the penguin too.
both by the
You
penguin.
would think he would think, okay, we're just going to use a magnet again for the next caper.
Which, if you want to apply realism to this show, then it's like, well, the penguin learned how to beat him once, and he's just using it again.
Right.
So everybody's in police headquarters, and O'Hara mentions how they're going to do the exchange for money at Wayne Manor, like you mentioned earlier, and we get like this drop of like, well, you know who he is, Commissioner. He's like, yeah, I'm good friends with Bruce, and I dine there often. It's, it's a nice, to me, like it kind of calls back to like those early detective comics where like Bruce would be entertaining Gordon and hanging out, smoking their pipes and all that.
In the Detective 27, first time you see Bruce and Gordon, they're sitting talking in the commissioner's office. I believe they're each enjoying maybe a cigar or something, or a pipe.
Yeah, and it's funny that we lost that
Batman.
along the way. Like I couldn't tell you the last time we saw like Bruce and Gordon as friends in like a modern context.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing it again in like Batman First Night and Second Night. And, in Second Night, Gordon details a little more why he is friends with Bruce Wayne. I think it's in Second Night that scene happened. But I kind of miss that. I kind of wish maybe we'll get that in like the current run, because they definitely seem to have more of a like early 80s Batman's a little more loose kind of feel to it. So maybe we'll see him and Gordon be friends again.
Should we bring back smoking Batman?
No, I'm gonna go with no on that. I think Batman's too
All the
much of a.
Bat-related candy cigarettes you could sell to the kids.
I mean, you could use that for the Penguin. 'Cause, I mean, that was the whole thing. Like with those candy cigarettes, they would have like that powder, so you could like blow through the paper and like make it look like you were making smoke, or at least the good ones did. Like maybe they'll bring that back at some point. But again, when they're discussing like their plans of how they're going to trap the Penguin, there's this moment where like Batman's like, you did talk to them? And he's like, well, I talked to the butler. And he says that Bruce is going to be fishing again. And it's like, oh, okay. Fishing. Got it. So they have this whole thing worked out. He's talked to Alfred, or O'Hara's talked to Alfred. They're going to hide in the armor, but nobody tells Aunt Harriet that this is going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
So she finds out the hard way when she finds Alfred unconscious and all that. It's funny.
Right. And I gotta, when she sees Alfred passed out right next to the actor model, and oh mercy me or whatever, and then at the end when she sort of says, "If you'd have seen what I saw," I think
Right.
it's a bit of an innuendo, like, oh, what's going on here, Alfred?
Yeah.
What you doing with that young lady? At
Alfred
least that's the impression I got. They were kind of hinting at.
Yeah. It was so the impropriety of them laying fully clothed on a couch during the middle of the day was
Right.
such a scandal.
Oh yeah, scandalous.
But of course, Batman knows that this whole thing is the setup, because Penguin earlier used the exact words that Batman had spoken. So it was all a fake. There were dummies in the armor, which, that would explain why when they broke in the first place, they didn't jump out of the armor to stop Penguin.
Right.
But the final fight is at the Penguin's hideout. So, you'd think they could have just set up decoys in Wayne Manor. And then once the decoys were gassed, they could be like, surprise, suckers, we're really over here. But then the manor would get trashed. So what better way than to trash Penguin's hideout?
You mentioned something about and Harriet not knowing. I don't think Alfred was in on it, because they allowed him to get gassed.
Well, I mean, But I mean, he was the one that told them they were going to be gone, and he set up the whole thing. You can use Wayne Manor for the front hall for the exchange. So he had to have
Okay, yeah,
known. But
right.
give Alfred like some nose plugs because we've seen them use that before.
Right.
You know?
Or that
But
anti-allergy pill that
yeah.
Batman has from time to time. Or no, that was from this Joker sneezing powder. The one that he gave Robin in the '66 movie. Like, quick, take this pill and
Right. Yeah.
he went in the
That one.
back seat and he uses the gas on.
But
But no, Alfred's just like he's just like a sacrificial lamb there.
yeah, he's just like, well, Alfred, you're gonna have to take one for the team this time because our shipment of anti-sleep gas pills haven't arrived yet.
Right.
But when we get to the final fight, which is always like the highlight for me, they start off with like a sword fight, but it's with the umbrellas. And anytime Batman's sword fighting, I think of that Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil, Ra's al Ghul desert sword fight.
Sure.
And it goes into the whole like swashbuckling era of like 40s movies or Zorro. So I always kind of get excited to see Batman with anything that's even remotely resembling the sword. But it doesn't go well for Batman and Robin with their umbrella swords, or their umbrellas. Like they get discarded with them pretty quickly.
Right.
How did you like the fight in this issue? Because it's really cramped compared to some of the other ones. Like the room's small and the photography feels very in your face.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because that's the same impression I got. As soon as the fight started and they panned back, it looked like they had maybe 15 by 9 feet or something in that little room, and they did a lot of up close shots because they probably didn't have. That was the only way they could shoot it because of the cramped set they had, and it was not. It's not characteristic of what comes later when they pan back for a lot of that.
Yeah.
The up close shots are still far enough away where you see all the action. So it felt a little disjointed, maybe, but and very quick. It wasn't as long as some of the other bat fights that happened, but so that the finale wasn't as spectacular as you expect.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't like the Riddler one.
Right. But once again, we're only on episode 3, so they're still trying to find their footing on how all of this works. And they probably learned from that when watching the dailies, watching the final product. Like we need bigger space. We're going to do the big fight. So I was it was the end of fight for me was kind of lackluster just because everything we just said. What about you? What do you think?
Like I said, I like the sword fight aspect of it, but it does go by rather quickly. And yeah, I have to wonder if that, like you said, if that was a learning experience for them of like, yeah, when we shorten the scale, it's a lot harder to get stuff done because of the last episode. You had this huge room, this giant elephant prop, and they had space to do stuff. And like, it's so tight in there that Robin himself at the very end, he's just kind of like sitting on the table watching Batman fight because there's nowhere for him to go and fight anyone else.
And he does a really odd chuckle at the
Yeah,
very
he
end,
does.
like sounded like a goofy clown or something.
Yeah, it was a little Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah.
It's just like
Did you notice on some of those up close shots you could kind of see shadows of the cameraman?
Yeah.
Like a half a second, like just because of how close they were, the actors. Yeah, I think I caught that. At least my brain's telling me I caught some of that. But yeah, that goofy chuckle and him just sitting on the table, it's always been weird.
Yeah, he's just like, well, there's only 2 left and Batman's got it. I'm just going to chill back here for a second. It's kind of the impression I got. And then, we go to the party at the end. It's like a week later and we find Aunt Harriet chiding Dick. Like she won't let him have any more hors d'oeuvres because he had plenty of shrimp salad.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he's not going to go to sleep because he's had too much fish.
Yeah, she said it's going to give him nightmares.
Yeah. I was like, okay. What was that?
I was just gonna say, okay, let's say Robin's about 16. Of course, he looks, older, but
I think
I
he's like
remember how
15.
15. Okay, I remember how
Yeah.
I was 15, and it was I was a little more strong-willed, I think, than the boy wanted to hear, and you probably were too.
I would think that just that much seafood would probably make him sick if he's just like pounding it down and it's been sitting out for God knows how long. And
That's true. But 15-year-olds, they can eat a bag of Oreos and lose 5 pounds overnight.
yeah. I mean, when we were in track and field in high school, like we would go to this all you can eat Mexican restaurant and just put it away and be totally fine. So I don't, if she's worried about his waistline, like I don't think we got to worry about that because
Right.
he's getting plenty of action. I just like given the time that this, was made and what, food and health and safety regulations, I'm like, how good is that shrimp salad that's been sitting out there? Is it
Right.
properly refrigerated? But the interesting thing about this scene is Commissioner Gordon. So they're having like this, cocktail party. Everyone's dressed up really nice. And he's telling people about the origin of the bat costume.
Yeah.
In effect, telling the audience, like, why does he dress up like Batman? Well, he knows that criminals are a cowardly and superstitious lot. They don't say that, but we know because they're superstitious and cowardly. And he talks about how they'd be afraid of a giant bat. They're a fearful group, and this is why he wears it, even though this isn't really a terrifying bat costume,
Right.
But I appreciated that nod. What did you think of it? Did it
Yeah, I
catch your
thought
attention at all?
Oh, yeah, I thought it was great. I had completely forgotten about, that line, and then he was the one who described it rather than Batman series. But, yeah, I definitely had the same appreciation for it that you did.
And then it just kind of ends on a weird note. Like Dawn shows up with her manager, and she's just kind of rude and bored once again, and she just goes over to be by the fireplace by herself. And we get told by her manager that she's only acting that way because she's in love with Batman, and I guess there's no point in life anymore because she's just so fixated. And they're just like, oh, that sucks.
Love sick. I mean, she was already miserable. Now she's more miserable.
Yeah, now she's miserable in a different way, and it's like, oh, okay, well,
But even if she looks like a person that gets everything she wants, though. But even if she had Batman for a short time period, she would still come back to
yeah,
once the thrill was gone, she'd still be in the same position.
yeah. So that's how we end. Any final thoughts on this episode?
Well, harkening back to what I was saying earlier, you can still see that the show is trying to find what works versus what doesn't work in some of these. And I think as the episodes go, you'll find that it gets a lot cleaner and tighter. And when they take direct adaptations from comics, sometimes it works. Sometimes I think that what they come up with for the show is almost better. For example, when you get to episodes like The Bookworm, I love that two-parter. They bring in a new villain. At least I don't think The Bookworm was I thought he was created for the show for Roddy McDowell.
I think he was.
Okay. And by that point, they really have got it. They've got it down. And you get a little bit of overacting, especially from Burt Ward here. And he kind of tones it down a little bit where it works better as they go. And I'm probably sure that was notes from the producer or the director. Be like, we love your excitement and enthusiasm, but dial it back just a hair.
I mean,
And
that's why they hired him.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. But he's almost overdoing it a tad on this one. I will say this.
The 1-2 punch in the commissioner's office.
Oh, yeah.
That scene.
Yeah. I think Burgess Meredith might be the best casting out of anybody in this show. He's it's almost like he was the Penguin prior to getting cast. He's so good. His voice works so well. And I didn't know that he had actually quit smoking prior to getting the Penguin. So that's probably why you don't see him puffing on it too much. It's just sort of lit in his mouth. But yeah, from what I read, smoking is what gave him that gravelly voice, which makes sense. But overall, I think it's a good two-parter. There's a lot of good. There's more good than bad in this combo. Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to. Oh, I did want to ask you. Robin says something like "holy haberdashery" in the first part. Is that because I heard the episode with you and Bill? Is that the first "holy" from Robin, or did he say it in the second Riddler episode you guys watched?
That is I totally forgot this part in my notes. The first one is Robin is holy popcorn. He says holy in this two-parter. We don't have the haberdashery one in this, do we? Did I miss that one?
Well, whenever they pulled up the penguin on the jail feed, I thought that's where he said a holy, and I thought it was haberdashery. I mean, I could be wrong, but
if he did that, I missed it when I was taking notes. I did clock 3 of them. We have holy popcorn when he's talking about Don Parrish. Then when they get captured during her kidnapping, we get holy lodestone because of the magnet pulling them. And then when the penguin leaves and they're stuck to the wall, we get holy flypaper, which is which is on the soundtrack album.
Right.
Which is the one I always remember because I've, heard it like a billion times listening to that cassette and now vinyl.
Right.
So we get 3, at least 3, maybe 4. I have to go back and rewatch now.
I remember you mentioned Dick Grayson says the first holy in either the first episode or the second episode. Did we get a Robin holy in either of those two?
No, just Dick Grayson.
Okay, so this
the
is our
holy
first...
barracuda.
Gotcha. Yeah, but this is our first Robin's using it in the wild.
In costume, yeah.
Right. Example. Okay, cool.
Yeah, there's some great pictures I'm going to have to find of, since you brought up like the smoking of, I mentioned in the last episode, the Batman 66 movie premiere, how they had, the cast in costume. And I thought I had it bookmarked, but there was a great shot of like Cesar Romero, like in makeup, but not fully in costume. And like him and Burgess Meredith just kind of hanging out and having a smoke before they go on. Or maybe he was at a restaurant. Like I want to say it was Burgess Meredith's granddaughter had shared some private photos of them from like that premiere. And she put it up on back in the day when it used to be Twitter.
Yeah.
I always just kind of thought were cool. But
well, let me ask you, what I said a second ago, as far as perfect casting is concerned for this overall series, would you rank Penguin pretty high up there? I mean, you don't have to agree with being the best, but I just always thought that he was the perfect height, perfect weight. The prosthetic nose applied to him looked great. And the way he acted was it was exactly like he jumped off the pages of the comic book.
I mean, when you get to the main villains that we see over and over, like they're all really, really solid choices. Like they really, like Adam West, they really give their all to their performances and take it really seriously. And Burgess is no exception. And like we have these perfect, like they are, like you said, they're off the page. And so you can't really fault them for any of that because they're so perfect. And that's like, we talked about earlier, like how we get these different iterations of the characters in different movies. Like, I don't really mind them taking some liberties because we do have in some way like a perfect representation of these characters from that specific time.
Right.
And Penguin, I've said it on other places, not my favorite Bat villain necessarily, but when he's played by Burgess Meredith, like that's That's like
A whole new ball game. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love how his acting choices to talk with the cigarette holder still in his mouth, so you get that gritty and he's kind of talking out of the side of his mouth versus when he would actually take it out, say certain lines.
Yeah.
Perfect choice. Perfect choice. Because that could easily have gone the wrong way trying to talk with that in your mouth. But the way he pulled it off.
It just adds to his like wah wah that he throws in there. The episode, the first part of this is, find feathered finks. And, a fink is either a contemptible person, an informer, or a hired strike breaker for the American Heritage Dictionary. And he calls his henchmen finks quite a bit in this episode too. And it always stuck in my head because, again, of the aforementioned album. I'm wondering going forward if that's a term he keeps using for his henchmen, or if that's just for this episode because it was in the title. So
I remember him using a few different ones in subsequent episodes and the 66 movie. He would call him my incontemptible such and such, or something like that. Something just bizarre, but he always had some sort of alliteration, fine, think, with the letters. But he may have. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah,
more Javi 66
as we go. But and again, you go to the henchmen, like in the movie, they were like numbered. But these ones, they all have different, bird themed names. Like we have Hawkeye.
Yep.
There's one that we never see. Yeah.
Character.
Predates the sucky Marvel version. Sorry, I've always been a Green Arrow guy. And
Me too.
Never been a fan of Hawkeye, either in the comics or live action.
Right.
Although that Matt Fraction Hawkeye series, I have read that. That is a good comic book. So yeah, if you're looking for a comic recommend and want to see where the current writer of Batman got some notoriety, go check out Hawkeye by Matt Fraction. But that is gonna do it for this episode. Patrick, where can people find you? What do you got going on?
Oh, I've got lots going on. I don't want to get too into it deal, but you can follow me at Patrick75 on Instagram, or the C flat THESKLATS. I've got something new dropping on Valentine's Day, which I think might be my best work yet.
Well, awesome, man. Looking forward to checking that out.
Thanks.
And of course, you can find me right here on batman-on-film.com. By the time this goes up, it'll be my last review for Batman and Robin number 30 will be on the site. That title is ending now, I guess. I definitely don't see any solicits for it going forward, so it looks like once Philip Kennedy Johnson gets this last issue out and moves over to Marvel proper, well, he's still got his Superman book, but that looks like it's it for that title. So make sure you check out that, and then our YouTube channel for video reviews and unboxing by me and Pete and everybody else, and of course the website itself. So thank you for listening, and announcer Rachel will take us out.
You've been listening to the original and official podcast of the Batman on Film website. Follow BOF on Threads at the Batman on Film. Follow BOF on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Batman on Film. To keep BOF up and running, go to patreon.com/BatmanOnFilm, or you can buy BOF a beer at buymeacoffee.com/TheRealBatmanOnFilm. For Jet and everyone at BOF, I'm announcer Rachel. Authoritative, definitive, the original. Batman on Film, founded in 1998.